This is Sangram Surve, your guide to author branding. Welcome to the Author Branding Masterclass. At the outset, let me congratulate you because you are possibly living your dream. Most people dream about being an author, but the fact that you're watching this video clearly indicates that you've already written your first book or are on your way to writing one. So congratulations. Writing is a passion project. Many people dream about writing a book. Very few actually end up starting to write one, and fewer still actually complete it. And out of those who complete it, a lot of them have a lot of difficulty in terms of even getting a publisher. And out of those that do get published, only 1% actually manage to sell anything more than 10,000 copies. And it's very likely that those who sell 10,000 copies plus are the ones who've actually mastered the art of branding. I will start this chapter by quoting a very famous line from Jack Welch, which basically says, "Control your destiny or somebody else will." And over here, it's very relevant that when you've decided to write your own book, you decide to control the destiny of your book. Because it's a painstaking task. You actually finish writing the manuscript, approach a publisher, and after approaching maybe 15 or 20 publishers, one publisher decides to take the punt and actually publish your book. And well, you're so happy that you actually finally managed to get a book contract. But you know what the bad news is? The bad news is you become one of the 90,000 books that got published this year. Because that's the actual figure. 21,000 of these are actually in English. So if you go to see, you land somewhere over here. So in other words, you are just a needle in a haystack. So the question is, what do you do if you're a needle in a haystack? And my answer to such questions is always simple. Just become a larger needle. Because the fact is that most publishers won't really end up doing much for you as an author. Publishers really print so many books in a year that it really cannot afford a lot of marketing budget on a single book. Now, if you put things in perspective, let's look at the number of movies released in a year. There are 1,000 plus Bollywood movies that get released every year. There are thousands of music albums that get released every year. But almost every movie produced has a marketing budget. Almost every music album released has a marketing budget. And for the movie, it's not just human capital in terms of the effort that goes into producing the movie, but it's actually even money that's put into the production. Same is the case with the music album. However, in the case of a book, it's usually only the human capital, which is the effort that goes in writing the book. The production cost is not really high. But despite that, most books really do not have a marketing budget. And that is where most books actually land up in one of those shelves where nobody actually notices it. And which is why, when I say control the destiny of your own book, I actually mean that do invest some time and money in the marketing of your book. Because if the book does well, you stand to gain royalties not just from the book, but all the other deals, for example, movie, TV, OTT, and whatever else that might come from it. But do invest the entire proceeds of the first 2 years in terms of marketing the book, because that's what goes into building your author brand. Hey guys, welcome back. In the last class, we looked at what was the importance of building an author brand, and now let's actually get down to the task of doing it. So what is a brand actually, and what's the difference between an author brand and a brand? As per the classic definition of a brand is a name, term, symbol, or design that differentiates an organization or a product from its rivals towards its customers. So in the world of branding, it typically boils down to things like colors, typography, any kind of symbol, a tagline, a definition of a brand personality which kind of makes sense to its target audience, because every brand talks to its specific target audience, and so on. In the case of an author brand though, it differs slightly. Colors, typography, fonts, etc. may not be as important, but the author's personality becomes extremely important. The genre that he writes for becomes extremely important. Also, what's important is his own values, his beliefs, what is the kind of target audience that he chooses to speak to, which obviously is pulled down from the first book or the set of books that he writes, the kind of characters that are portrayed in those books, the kind of realities that he portrays in those books. That's what goes into building the author brand. But once you've decided your niche, it obviously makes sense that you stick to that niche and you stand for that particular positioning. Well, so the question is, how do these niches get decided? I mean, how does an author decide that this is the niche that I'm going to write? So I did something. I basically decided to just call up some of my author friends and ask them, how is it that they ended up writing for the genres that they write in? And they said, well, look here, buddy, it doesn't happen as if we decided to suddenly focus on a particular segment saying, we will write for Sec A 21 to 25. No, You often start by something that always excited you. Okay, it was a story that you possibly saw in your corporate life. Maybe there was a political scandal that happened in your organization that inspired a story. Maybe it's a love story that happened in your friend's life that inspired a story. Maybe it was something else. It's always a story that's itching to be told right within you that decides your first book. So, once you decide to write a story, the choice of characters, the kind of situation that you portray in it, okay, their life stages, etc., that's what defines your target audience. Because when you choose your characters and when you choose the situations in the story and the storyline itself, your genre and your target audience in a way get defined. But the advice is that once you decide on that particular target audience, you stick to it and you stick to that particular genre. So while the definition of your target audience does not start in a very scientific manner, it often starts from something that you decided on. It's always important to kind of isolate on who this target audience would be, because that's what would form the base of your marketing. Your target audience can be decided in various ways. It can be by an age group. It could be ranging from anyone from 18 to 40. It could be decided by gender. Maybe there is a woman who's writing about women issues and she'll find that her target audience is largely going to be women. Your target audience can also be decided by genre, which genre you've decided to write for, and hence can appeal to audiences who like that particular genre. We'll speak a lot more about target audiences in some of the later chapters where we actually talk of how to boost your promoted posts or actually how to advertise to the target audiences selected. More about that later. Now let's get down to the task of actually building platforms on which your author brand will sit. So let's get down to actually creating the author profile. So one thing to be remembered here is do not market the book, market the author. Now in order to create the author profile, you'll obviously be creating a profile for yourself on all the major social media platforms. Let's start with everything digital. So the digital platforms which are typically used to build the author brand are the usual suspects. You have Facebook, you have Instagram, you have LinkedIn, and you have Twitter. Facebook is obviously the most popular platform and one can't stay without keeping off Facebook. So Facebook, definitely an author profile has to be built. So start by creating an author page on Facebook in either your name or any of the pen name, if at all you make that choice of writing under a pen name. You can also make a profile on Instagram if your target audience is younger and if you're appealing to younger audiences, or if you're writing on subjects like romance which are appealing to the young. So Instagram is the platform that's typically frequented by the younger target audiences, and if your target audience lies there, you can actually create a presence on Instagram. Twitter can be a hygiene presence, although Twitter really works for established authors and celebrities, but a hygiene presence can be maintained on Twitter. And if at all you're writing a non-fiction book which is professional in nature or which deals with business, or your fiction story has got some connect to a specific industry, then maybe LinkedIn might work for you. Otherwise, you should be happy with creating a social media profile on just Facebook and Instagram with a hygiene presence on Twitter. Hey, welcome back. Now that you've already created those profiles, now let's begin the exciting part of the journey. So I'm sure you guys must have gone and created your own profiles on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever your choice of platforms have been. So now you as an author are already existing on these platforms. Now what do we do with these platforms? And which is where the most exciting part of the journey begins, which is thinking of the big idea. In a lot of our work that we've done for authors, it was always one single-minded big idea that made the difference. And in this chapter, I'm going to share with you some of the secret sauce that goes into actually crafting this big idea. I'll be sharing with you not just some of the principles, but also 4 of our biggest case studies where we made a huge difference in the marketing effort thanks to one big, long, disruptive idea. Now the question is, where does this big disruptive idea come from? And the answer is pretty simple. It comes from what you've already written. It comes from the book. Almost all the books that I've worked on in terms of marketing, when I started reading the book, by the time I finished the book, the idea was already shouting out to me saying, hey, here is where the marketing spearhead lies. Now to spot this idea, you have to be as excited about the creative process of marketing as you were when you wrote the book. Now I'm not an author, but I'm a marketing guy. And I'm extremely excited about my job, which is marketing the book. So my eyes are constantly looking for that one hook which could actually lead to that one big disruptive idea. I'm going to give you a few examples of a few books that I read and how from one corner of the book that one big disruptive idea came shouting out and said, hey, this is the one that's going to make a critical difference to the book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to narrate to you some of our case studies, and I will come to the principle of what led us to crack that idea later, right? I'll start off with our biggest case study, which is Amish Tripathi's Secret of the Nagas. Amish and me were good friends, and it was then that Amish approached us for the marketing of this book, The Secret of the Nagas. Now, for the first time, when I read the book, I had no prior experience in marketing a book at all, which in a way worked because there were no preconceived notions with this is how book marketing has to be done. So we just went with our gut and did what we could, and well, it just worked out. So when I read The Secret of the Nagas, the one thing that excited me was this attempt that Amish was making to almost create a Lord of the Rings kind of spectacle in India. The book was so visual and so lucidly written. When I was reading the book, it was almost like seeing the movie in front of my eyes. And possibly it struck me that maybe here's where the idea lay. Why not make a movie? Well, what we meant was not actually make a movie, but why not market a book with a trailer? Now you may say, well, trailers are all done and dusted and trailers really don't work. But I'm talking of a time and age when no trailers were actually being made. So a trailer at that point in time was a novel idea. And when we actually spread out the vision amongst our group of creative friends that what we're attempting to do is to actually make a trailer for a Lord of the Rings kind of a book, and especially one that revolved around Shiva at the center stage, there was so much excitement in the creative community that it was the other way around. I had the creative community pitching to me saying, we want to be a part of this project. And well, when we sold that idea to Westland and to Amish, both of them felt that maybe given the budgets, a trailer may not be feasible. But thanks to the overall excitement amongst my producers and also my director, all of them decided to cut down their fees and actually make the trailer happen. And so we made the trailer. And the trailer actually turned out to be a clutter-breaking one. We made not just one, we actually ended up making 3 trailers. And the ultimate output was so good that Amish and Westland said that this should not be restricted only to digital. Why not give it a much bigger platform? Why not show it in the theaters? And at that point in time, we had a Shah Rukh Khan release happening, and this trailer was ultimately played during the airing of Ravan, which was a Shah Rukh Khan blockbuster. And that gave the largesse to this entire marketing exercise. The trailers delivered on the spot. The pre-orders for the book were good. We got a lot of free PR saying for the first time, trailers are now being used to market books, and the rest is history. Everyone knows how well The Secret of the Nagas did as a book. Let's take a look at this trailer.
This is a story of ancient India. The story of a beautiful princess, cursed by tradition. A magical elixir which drove 2 nations to war. The story of evil. This is the story of a chosen man. A man who became God. Shiva Trilogy in bookstores now.
Now this trailer worked really well, but that was because it was a category first at that time. It was a novel idea. It was an innovation. Will trailers work even today? Maybe not. Because after that, trailers became the rule. There is no novelty value in trailers. Almost every author now tries to do a trailer. So you need to search for the next big idea. So here's where we come to the filters that actually makes the big idea work. And those 3 filters are as simple as, number 1, is it a category first? Can you precede your idea with the words first ever? If it passes that filter, there's a good chance that idea is going to be an innovation. Number 2, if you tell this big disruptive idea to a friend, would he share it with somebody else over a coffee or a beer? Is it a shareable idea? 3, if you were to share this idea with a journalist, would he get excited and say, wow, this needs to be written about? If your idea passes all these 3 filters, then you're on to a winner. Let's look at another case study. Ravi Subramanian. Now, Ravi is a good friend. We've marketed most of his books, and we've done interesting ideas around most of them. But the one which I would particularly like to mention is one of his books called If God Was a Gamer. Now, If God Was a Gamer is again a classic Ravi Subramanian book. Murder mystery, Okay, there's a whodunit plot, white collar crime, something revolving around gaming and finance. And of course, there was a lot of interesting things that we could have done with this. And we were doing a lot of interesting marketing ideas again. There was a trailer thrown in, there were interesting posts. But there was one angle that was particularly catching the fancy of all of us back then creatively. This book was about bitcoins, and this book was about darknet. And in one of the discussions, we basically said that maybe there's something that we can do with this whole bitcoins thing, because bitcoins was a topic of discussion all around in most of the financial dailies. And somebody came up with this idea and said that if you're talking about bitcoins, why can't we create another parallel currency just for the marketing of this book? And we actually came up with the idea of creating litcoins. Now, what are litcoins, you may ask? Litcoins is actually a parallel currency created by us, connected to literature and books. The idea was very simple. Whatever marketing activities we did for the book, if the target audience decided to engage with any of these activities, they could actually earn this currency, which means they could actually earn litcoins every time they interacted and engaged with our marketing. And having earned this currency, you can actually redeem it and use it to buy merchandise from Ravi Subramanian, either his books or mugs or t-shirt, which we had specially produced for this exercise. So, as we launched the marketing campaign, we started giving people currency for engagement. So one like earned them 5 litcoins, one comment earned them 10 litcoins, and one share earned them 30 litcoins. We had a leaderboard which actually measured how each of Ravi's fans is actually earning more and more litcoins as a currency. And against this leaderboard, we actually showed them what they could actually buy for the same kind of currency that they were earning. Needless to say, the campaign caught on and the engagement levels rose, because this time we incentivized virality, although Facebook algorithm had severely restricted them. So let's see if we've got all the filters right. Was it a first ever idea? You bet. It was a first ever that somebody had attempted to use like a digital currency in literature or in a book marketing campaign. Was it shareable? Of course, whoever we expressed the idea to, everyone came back saying, wow, what a lovely idea, and actually passed it around to a lot many people. Did we get free PR? Of course. We got a lot of press coverage for this idea alone. So it did tick all the filters, and that's what ensured that it was another disruptive idea that did the trick. Now let's talk about possibly our most interesting case study. Now this was for the Oath of the Vayuputras, the third book in the Shiva trilogy from Amish. And we were obviously expecting this because Secret of the Nagas, job well done, and we were waiting for this brief to come, and the brief came. And when we went for the briefing meeting, Amish surprised us by a completely different kind of a brief. He said, look here, my scale on this book is quite large, and the scale of my ambition is also quite large. And let's figure out somehow if we could actually get national television for this one particular campaign. And we were a little surprised. We said, well, I mean, national television is a good ambition to have, but even for the largest of the books, television is still an expensive medium. So how does one go about getting television as a medium for a book marketing campaign? And so we went back with the brief, did not refuse, did not object to it, and we said, let's see what can be done with that. And many times it so happens that what is posed as a limitation actually becomes the trigger for good innovation. And when we went back and we started racking our brains saying, what is it that actually gets free television? Forget cheap. We asked ourselves a different question. We said, what is it that gets free television? And an hour or two into brainstorming, and one of us just said, yeah, it's music. Music gets free television. And suddenly, the idea bulb lit, and we said, of course, if it's music, then why aren't we doing music? So last time we had gone about and done a trailer. I said, this time, let's actually produce a music video for the promotion of the book. And everyone got excited by the idea. Wow, a music video for a book based on Shiva? Massively exciting, right? So a classic track, the whole visualization, the whole brief became exciting. So we got a music producer involved, and we gave the brief to him. Needless to say, even he was very excited, and he said, wow, music video for Amish, for Shiva, fantastic. But he didn't stop there. He went one step further and he said, but why a music video? Why don't we do an entire original soundtrack for the book? So I said, an entire music album? So I said, yeah, why not? I mean, Together we'll jointly curate the artists that are going to go. And then one of us suddenly went and checked on Google, and we figured out that if we actually did end up doing that, we would be the world's first original soundtrack for a book. So wow, another first ever. And so obviously the whole brief became exciting. So we didn't stop there. We basically said, okay, we've got a good product now. Now how do you amplify it? The how to get TV part was still not cracked. So we went to Times Music, we explained the idea to Times Music, and we said, listen, we've got a great product, we've got a music video, we've got 10 kick-ass tracks, all based on the Oath of the Vayuputras, all portraying the journey of Shiva in that book. And the album's going to sell well because you've got all of Amish's base, a good amount of them are going to buy it. So Times Music was obviously quite excited, and Times Music said, why not? I mean, looks like a good idea. What do you want in return? And we said, what we want in return is basically free media from Times. Okay, Times Music we are talking to, so obviously we are talking to the Times Group per se, who owns the largest newspaper in the country. So we said we want free media from Times. And Times said, okay, that's doable. I mean, if the album does well, media looks like a doable idea. Actually, they were happy with the fact that we were not asking money and we were producing that album at our cost. So the deal was struck. And we actually went ahead, licensed the album to Times Music, produced the music video, produced those 10 songs, and actually created the world's first original soundtrack for a book. Now going back to our filters, was it a category first? You bet it was. Nobody's done an original soundtrack earlier. Was it PRable? Of course, all journals were excited saying, music album, Amish actually outdoes himself now. And in addition to that, it was also a shareable idea. Everyone wanted to talk about the music. The bonus was that we actually got 10 times the media value from Times of India in terms of print ads to promote the album. Now the cover of the album and the cover of the book was the same. So all the advertising the Times Music did for the album actually accrued to the book. So for an X cost, we delivered 10x the media value to Westland as a publisher. Not just that, it actually went ahead and became the second largest non-Bollywood music album for Times Music. So all the boxes were ticked. It became an extremely memorable campaign. Memorable to the extent that when we did a celebration event for the Oath of the Vayuputras, the buzz was so high that Amish actually managed to invite Amitabh Bachchan for the celebration event. And Amitabh actually tweeted saying that, I've never seen the scale of this kind of marketing or this spectacle of marketing for books ever. And publishing in industry has actually come a long way. A tweet coming from Amitabh for free, well, that was the biggest compliment that we had for the book. Once again, a disruptive idea. But one critical filter that got added to all the other filters that we've been using so far is that we actually added a collaborator here. And the collaborator this time was Times Music. And thanks to this collaboration, we were actually raised the scale of promotion to a completely new level. And that's the filter that I'd like to add to your list of filters in order to think big disruptive ideas. If you can think of a collaborator that can actually increase the scale of the idea and which will actually stand to benefit from the marketing effort of this idea, then it's ideal to look for one. So let's mix it up a bit now. All along I've been speaking about how to market fiction. We've also done some bit of non-fiction and some interesting ideas on non-fiction books as well. I'm going to share with you one such, or rather a latest non-fiction case study that we've done. Now this was for an autobiography of Dr. Habil Khorakiwala, the chairman of Work Hard Foundation. Now this was a book which kind of encapsulated the whole journey of Work Hard, right from the time it started to the current day. And it came to us because of a reputation in marketing books, and he said, now what can we do? Obviously, you begin by reading the book because that's where, like I already said, the idea or the main big disruptive idea came. And one of the things that I noticed was that it was actually Dr. Khorakiwala's journey, wherein he himself was mentored by a lot of big stalwarts in his entire journey towards Work Hard. He got a chance essentially to take his journey to the next level with the help of industry giants, friends, mentors, and so on. Another thing I realized is that Dr. Khorakiwala, obviously the stature at which he was, did not want to become a famous author. He did not want to have author brownie points when he wanted to write the book. The objective pretty much seemed to be that he wanted to tell the Work Hard story to the world. And there was also a motive of mentoring younger entrepreneurs by narrating his own story. And we took the last part of mentoring, where we took his desire to mentor entrepreneurs and we saw the potential for another idea over there. The book's name was Odyssey of Courage, and we actually went back to him with an idea called School of Courage. Now, School of Courage was an idea where we proposed that it becomes a mentoring platform where Habil Khorakiwala will personally mentor young budding entrepreneurs to take their organizations to the next level. Now, we linked this platform to the book marketing. So, entry to the School of Courage was open only to people who read the book and who understood the essence of what the work hard way was, which was what the book spoke about. Now, we went and presented his idea to Dr. Khorakiwala, saying that it can not just become a good platform for marketing the book, but in a way, it's a much bigger platform to take his legacy forward and take his original objective in writing the book, which is to actually spread the message out to younger entrepreneurs on how to lead their journeys in a much better manner. Now, Dr. Khorakiwala fell in love with the idea. And then the next question was that who will actually conduct the School of Courage? How would a syllabus be structured? And going with our principle of collaborators, we proposed that we could possibly rope in a B school to actually structure the syllabus and make the curriculum for the School of Courage. But Dr. Khorakiwala liked the idea so much, he said, why a B school? Why can't we rope in McKinsey or Accenture to actually structure this entire curriculum? And we were pleasantly surprised. We said, okay, if you're talking of getting Accenture, nothing like it. And he actually managed to pull it off. He actually spoke to Accenture, was doing some work for Work Hard, and Accenture actually came on board to make this idea much, much larger. So Dr. Khorakiwala sweetened the deal even further. He threw in more goodies, and he said he could actually invite 12 of his personal friends who were industry stalwarts to become additional mentors for the School of Courage. So now the final structure of School of Courage was, it was a 12-month program mentored by Dr. Khorakiwala and 12 other industry stalwarts, plus structuring by Accenture with a day to be spent in Accenture Innovation Labs in Bangalore, all of it coming for free for people who are going to read the book and answer a few questions. Suddenly it became a great marketing platform and a fantastic initiative. When we put this out in marketing, we soon realized that there was tremendous amount of interest from entrepreneurs from all across the country. So the way the program stands now is we had 2,000 plus applications for the program from all over the country. 47 were finally shortlisted, and the program is slated to begin later this year. Again, did it cross all the filters that we discussed so far? Of course, it was an industry first. We actually created a school out of a book marketing idea. Did it sell books? Of course it did. Was it a shareable idea? Of course, a lot of my entrepreneur friends told their friends that they need to be a part of this initiative. Was it PRable? You bet. We got a lot of free PR for this idea. Again, we used the principle of collaborators. This time it was Accenture who actually made the idea much larger than what it was. These are some of the principles that we've used to actually come up with large, big, disruptive ideas. So whenever you sit down to figure out what the marketing idea for your book could be, do a reading of the book. Look at what is that idea from within the book, from within the content of the book, the characters, the contents, the chapters, where it's actually shouting out and saying to you that, well, I could be the spearhead for your marketing effort. Then apply the filters. Is the idea that you thought about the first ever? Is the idea shareable? Is the idea something that will excite a journalist? Secondly, can you find collaborators to make the idea bigger and larger? And trust me, if you can get all these filters right, you certainly have a winner on your hands and you're ready for the next stage, which is actually starting to prepare the content based on this large idea. Great, so we've seen now how to get that big idea cracked. I've given you some tips. Your homework should have been to actually read the book and come up with those big ideas. Now the next step is obviously how to lay it out in a systematic marketing plan. So the best time to start marketing a book is actually 2 months prior to the launch of the book. Because the best marketing period for any book is the tease phase, because that's where no one knows about the book and you can create a lot of curiosity around the book. So start 2 months in advance and start making a marketing plan. Now obviously this marketing plan is going to get rolled out on all the social media platforms that we've already established an author presence on, namely Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever platforms you choose. Now the marketing plan typically should be made into a content plan where you have a complete overview of what's going to come over the next 2 months. It has to be centered around a big idea, obviously, because that's what will hold it together. But there can be a lot of smaller content buckets where you can talk of various smaller things which are relevant to the book. This could be introduction of characters if it's a fiction book. It could be a trailer. It could be small video snippets covering little nuggets from the book. It could be illustrations revolving around situations or scenarios from the book itself. Whatever are the ideas that you crack need to be put into a systematic content plan. On an average, 3 to 5 posts a week should suffice to keep Facebook sufficiently activated. You may also deploy platforms like Instagram if your target audience is younger, as I've already elaborated earlier, and Instagram can be used very effectively to reach out to these younger target audiences. However, remember one thing, that Instagram is a far younger medium and it also is a platform for personal expression. So when using Instagram, mix up your book promotion post with a lot of yourself into it. So throw yourself into it. If you're extrovert, if you're confident, express your own personality relevant to the book through your Instagram posts. A good example of how people do it very nicely is authors like Durjoy Datta, Savi Sharma, Ravinder Singh, who use the Instagram platform reasonably well. And once you start deploying each of these content buckets, your marketing plan is then actually set into motion. Now, when you're planning this content, always remember one thing, that plan 3 to 4 spikes in this entire 2-month period, which is leading up to the launch of the book. Now, these spikes could be around the big items in the content, which obviously includes the big disruptive idea. But in addition to that, there can be smaller items which are still big spikes, which may possibly include the launch of the book cover, which may include the trailer launch, which may include the first chapter download, and so on. Now, the quality of content that you develop is also equally important, which basically means that it's not just about producing content. A lot of our ideas worked very well because the quality of production was really high. You may want to look at possibly involving a small agency or maybe a few talented freelance professionals to help you with developing this content. Now that you've developed the content, it's important to promote it. The difference from our first book marketing case study and our latest case study is that Facebook as a platform has completely changed. The virality which was there earlier for all our earlier campaigns is no longer available, which basically means that any post that you put on Facebook today does not have a very high organic reach. Every single post therefore has to be promoted and you have to put marketing monies behind it. And hence, it does not make sense to do a lot of posts because they may not reach your audience anyways, especially if they are not promoted. So make fewer posts, make high quality posts, but promote them heavily. Also, understand that these are the first 2 months of the campaign and do not have an excessive ROI orientation on this campaign. Not everything is going to lead to book sales. So it pretty much works like the way classical marketing works, where you have your TV, your outdoors, which may not directly contribute to sales, but which create an aura around the brand. Similarly, these qualitative content posts that you're developing in the first 2 months of the campaign are creating a good surround around your book. You have not yet started trying to convert this aura into actual sales. So in this phase, focus on creating a good buzz, a good word of mouth, and a good virality around your content. So promote them heavily, but don't think too much of ROI as of this phase. The time to convert it to sales will come much later, which I will elaborate in the next chapter. Now, for those of you who may not be actually using an agency or a freelance, here's some digital breakfast to actually help you on the journey. The next few screens will actually show you how to do some of the simple tasks that I shall be advising you on Facebook. So when you're making posts and promoting posts, please understand that Facebook encourages visually pleasing posts. So your creatives cannot have more than 20% text. Facebook will usually not promote them if they have anything more than 20% text. Secondly, be mindful of the sizes when you're designing these posts. Use the following link as a guide to create Facebook posts. The first link is helping you to actually learn how to create posts on Facebook. The second link will actually help you to promote a post on Facebook. Now use the hyper-targeting options available with Facebook to reach precise audiences. Use this link to learn how to create audiences on Facebook. You can target audiences by demographics, behaviors, and interests. You can even punch in a keyword like Harry Potter and ask Facebook for more suggestions. The post will be boosted to audiences that are matching your filters. The above link will guide you in detail. Use the Facebook Page Manager app to actually see insights on how your posts are working. This app will actually guide you with respect to how many people saw your post, how many people liked it, how many people shared, how many people commented, and hence which posts are performing better than the other. Use these simple tools, experiment with them, and you'll find that your journey to understanding digital marketing is progressing fast. Now, whether you use an agency or not, it's always a good practice to get some understanding of digital marketing. So it's always good to deep dive, learn some of these digital tools, because this knowledge will always stand you in good stead. Now that we've spoken of Facebook, let's turn our attention to Instagram, the younger platform. Now the good news about Instagram is that Instagram is still viral. Instagram, unlike Facebook, has not killed virality completely, and a lot of the content that you develop on Instagram go viral on its own if you use it well. But remember that Instagram is a highly visual medium. So your posts really need to be good looking for them to go viral on Instagram. So use a good designer, or there are a lot of tools available on the web which will help you design really good looking Instagram posts. Remember that Instagram is a medium of expression, not one of selling. So throw a lot of yourself inside. Use Instagram to express yourself. Use Instagram to talk about your hobbies, likes. You're there at a coffee shop, reading an interesting book, put it on Instagram. Instagram also has a feature called Instagram Stories. Use that well. You go out on a picnic and you have an interesting thought, talk about it. There are a lot of younger authors who are using Instagram to their advantage. I had mentioned Savi Sharma, Durjoy Datta earlier. Also, influencers work very well on Instagram. Now, these influencers typically would also do a post on your behalf, and the strength of these influencers can be gauged by looking at how many followers there are. There are also agencies which will help you identify the right influencers by tapping into their follower base, the demographics of their follower base, and thereby matching your book with the right kind of influencers. Lastly, hashtags work very well on Instagram. Learning to use hashtags well can actually extend the reach of your post by a substantial degree. In the following slide, I'll be giving you a link to find out some of the most popularly used book Instagram hashtags. Using these hashtags will dramatically increase the reach of your post. Lastly, there's a feature on Instagram called Bookstagram. These are influencers on Instagram who specialize in promoting content on books. Use Bookstagrammers effectively to extend the reach of your book. Now let's talk about Twitter, now that we've discussed all the other platforms. Honestly, I'm not a big believer in Twitter, especially for an author who's just starting out. My view is Twitter usually works better for celebrities and established authors. So having a hygiene presence on Twitter might work, but putting too much bandwidth in Twitter at your starting stage may not be a great idea. In any case, I'll put a link in the next slide, which will give you some tips to make your Twitter adventure a bit more fruitful. While we've created a presence on all these social media platforms, with Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or any of these other platforms, it's actually important to have a platform which is your own, where you own the fans, where your fans are not fans, but they're subscribers. And that platform is your website. It's extremely critical to actually create an author website of your own. And this author website is where we will attempt to convert all our fans into subscribers, towards whom any further marketing efforts can be focused. On the next screen, I shall be telling you a few tips to making this website. Ensure that your website covers the following. A, an author profile, which could include your biodata and a few of your mugshots that could also be downloaded by press or by anyone who wishes to have your pictures. Obviously, there needs to be a book section since you're writing a book. The book section should typically include obviously a book summary, trailers, if at all you do decide to produce and make them, testimonials from the book, a chapter download at an appropriate time when you plan to launch the book, and any other content which could include maps, characters, character illustrations, etc. that you may develop as part of your content kit. Obviously, there need to be buy links which will direct you to all the stores where the book will be available. These largely refer to the electronic stores. There should be a blog on the site where you should continuously keep on developing content, and a press section where all your press coverage can be stored. A good website should be made use of strategically. Do not classify the website as just an electronic brochure. A site is actually a lot more than that. Use the site to actually convert fans into subscribers. Here is where regularly updated content needs to be developed. The blog can be used effectively. Sometimes a video series can be developed. Sometimes you can host podcasts on the site. The only reason to develop content regularly is to give some reasons for fans to come back to your site regularly. Use your Facebook and other social media engagement to drive traffic to the site. There, if they come onto the blog and they like the content that they see there, or they like the videos that you've produced over there, ask them to subscribe. If they do end up subscribing, he suddenly converted from being a fan to one of your subscribers. This base of subscribers can be exploited later to either send pre-order links, sell further books, or any other form that you may deem fit for the future. And hence, websites should be treated as a good strategic device and not just as an electronic brochure. Hey, welcome back. This chapter is actually quite an interesting one. Short one, but very interesting. This is on actually getting your book cover design. And the book cover is an extremely important part in your overall marketing piece because it's the face of your product. Moreover, more often than not, it's the book cover that becomes the cover of your collaterals as well. So that's usually the creator that also gets into all your stores, all your point of sale materials, and hence it's very important to get a good book cover design. So please get personally involved with the design of your book covers, push your publisher's designing team, or use a good freelance design agency or a freelancer, but ensure that you do a great job on the book cover. When you're designing the book cover, it's important to remember a few things. First and foremost, it has to be clutter breaking because that's ultimately the face of your product. Number two, it has to be distinctive. So look at other book covers that have happened in the category. If you're in the mythology section, take a look at what your competition is. Which other books is your book going to sit with? What do their cover designs look like? And ensure that you do not end up repeating any of the things that are there on the covers of any of the books that are your competition. Number three, have a lot of detailing in your book covers. Sometimes the detailing in your book covers also make and create small stories. For example, when we did the book cover for the Scion of Ikshvaku, there were so many smaller details on the cover of the book, like the Pushpak Viman, like Ram's bow, like the smaller inscriptions on the bow, that each of these were used later to create small little intrigues, small little teases about the entire cover design per se. It's also important to test the shelf throw of the book, which means if you put the book on a shelf and if you walk back a few distance, is it actually attracting the eye when you're walking towards the aisle or when you're walking towards the shelf? Also important is there an element of tease in the book cover? This could possibly come from the visual, it could come from the positioning line, or anything that you choose to write on the cover of the book. In addition to what you write on the cover, the back of the book is also extremely important. What's written behind the book as the blurb or what's written behind the book as a summary of the book is actually like your trailer in print after somebody picks it off the shelf. When they're reading the summary, are they intrigued enough to actually take the book to the counter, pay for it and actually buy the book? One or two critical blurbs from celebrities or important influencers adds a huge value in terms of making the book pickable. And lastly, it doesn't hurt to have your own mugshot on the front inside or the back inside of the book and a little bio and a write-up about yourself to introduce yourself to the world of readers. Now we've spoken a lot about online platforms of marketing. Now let's talk a bit about what are the options available to us when it comes to the offline piece of marketing. There are only two critical elements that I would wish to talk about. First is retail. Retail is possibly the most important piece in your offline marketing. More often than not, where most books fail is in the retail distribution itself. Distribution is not even a part of marketing, but it's very important that you speak to your publisher and ensure that your book is well distributed. A lot of books that fail at retail fail at one of these three things. Number one, it is not distributed well enough, which means it's not available in enough number of stores. Two, if it's distributed well, it's possibly not stocked enough. You just don't have enough number of copies in the store. And number three, if it's distributed well and if it's also well stocked, but it doesn't get a good display, which means it's lying somewhere in the back alleys of the store and nobody really notices you at all. And hence, it's very critical that you bargain with your publisher and push your weight around to ensure that you get a good display for your book and your books are sufficiently displayed in the right quantities and at the right places so that anyone who walks in the store has a chance to see your book and has a chance to consider you as an author. Getting the best display again is a piece of art. Now the best display actually available to anyone is the bestseller shelf, needless to say, but one has to work his way towards that. In the meanwhile, If you do not get a best display, you always have the option of paying for a display to the stores that are actually stocking it, which could be a Crossword or a Landmark. It can be a tad expensive, but it's definitely one of the options to consider if you're not getting a great deal on your displays. Now let's discuss the second part of the offline marketing piece, which is public relations. Well, honestly, I will not be spending too much time on this one because usually for first-time authors, I'm yet to meet someone who's been happy with what their PR agency has actually managed to deliver. PR mandates usually for first-time authors do not work well. Most PR agencies are not able to get a justifiable exposure for their authors for the money they charge. So unless and until your PR agency or your PR agent gets sufficiently excited by the big disruptive idea and is relatively confident of getting you good exposure, PR is an exercise that's best avoidable. You can actually save your money there and put that in digital marketing. That is our honest view. Welcome back. We're progressing fast now in our journey towards the actual sales of the book. Let's pause a while and look at the role of influencers. There is a lot of talk in the author circuit about the role of influencers and how bloggers work. As a matter of fact, a lot of my author friends have engaged with blogging platforms which are aggregators for various bloggers, pays them huge fees to try and engage with bloggers. The usual modus operandi is these platforms send mails to all of their bloggers, out of which some of them write back and express interest in terms of covering the books. But more often than not, either the reviews or the quality of the reviews or the quality of response after these reviews have been published are usually far from desired, and they've not really led to a good ROI on their investments. I wouldn't really recommend engaging with any professional blogging agency. I'd rather recommend the path of the author himself approaching bloggers on his own accord. The best path in such cases is to always start first with friends and family. You have so many people who are happy about the fact that you've actually written your first book. Why not start approaching them? Almost all the authors that I know who have been very, very successful have actually taken this door-to-door route. Amish himself went from store to store trying to promote his book to almost all the bookstores. I know Durjoy has done the same with schools. Why stop at India? Even international authors like Dr. Wayne Dyer, who's written the world-famous book Your Erroneous Zones, which sold 35 million copies worldwide, had actually gone around the whole country with books packed in a station wagon, telling readers and smaller audiences again and again that, hey, this is a great book that I wrote. I love what I've written and I think it'll change your life and you must be reading it. That kind of passion oozing out from an author often touches audiences more than a completely random entity sending mails promoting some author's book to you. I strongly recommend that you put your passion out there. Talk to your friends, talk to your relatives, talk to people you know, approach bloggers yourself, appeal to them, show the confidence that you've written a good book, and I'm sure that that would have a far better chance of converting a blogger than any other route taken. So go out there, put yourself out, and try and get as many influencers as possible to cover your book. The general rule of thumb is that as you're approaching the launch date, have at least 100 to 150 reviews of your book on Amazon. Now to get these reviews, you may have to start approaching all these potential reviewers a lot earlier. Possibly if your launch is on a next day, possibly a month before that, you need to start approaching these reviewers with an appeal to review your book. The general rule of thumb is that if you approach 2,500 people, possibly 100 of them will say yes. So bear this maths in mind and approach people accordingly. Remember one thing, there is nothing that works better than personal marketing over here. And really put yourself out there, have confidence of your product, and we are sure your book will shine out. Welcome back. And as we get coming to the close of this class, it's time for kaching, which is time to get the sales registers ringing. Well, after all this marketing, I think we should start getting the marketing plan to be ready for the pre-orders. So whether you're getting ready for pre-orders or for the actual sales, the whole focus of marketing now shifts from marketing to sales. So the avenues that you select, the Facebook tools that you use, they are all focused towards ensuring only one thing, is that you drive traffic towards the platforms where your book is actually being sold and actually converted to sales. So the tool to be used over here in terms of Facebook is a tool called click to website. You use a click to website ad to drive traffic from all your social media platforms to all those platforms where your book is actually being sold. You use your analytics to actually see which of your posts are converting and which of your posts are not. You use 2 to 3 different ad sets to ensure that the right creatives are being used and the efficacy of these creatives is actually driving sales or not. Use the link in the next slide to actually learn to design ads to drive sales. All these links are available on the Facebook business pages. In addition to Facebook as a platform, Amazon has its own services called Amazon Marketing Services, which a lot of authors are increasingly using to drive sales. These are basically display ads that pop up on the right search in Amazon. If somebody clicks for a particular book that is similar to your genre and you've mentioned that book as a keyword, it's your ad that will actually be displayed on that particular search. Amazon Marketing Services is also a good tool to be deployed in this critical sales period. So use a combination of Facebook and Amazon Marketing Services to actually start driving sales. Be sure to allocate a good amount of your budget to this phase because here's where the hard-working advertising starts. Welcome back. Drum roll time, because we're about to launch your book. Finally, that time has come when your book is going to get out in the store. And if you have to do a launch, don't do a standard launch. Go out there and do something different, because standard launches no longer cut it. If you're doing a standard launch, more often than not, the press will not turn up, the number of attendees will be much lesser, and the ultimate sales will also be less. Also, have a lot of caution when you're working with celebrities, especially when it comes to launches, because celebrities turning up at launches more often than not take the attention away from the author. The celebrity will hog all the limelight and you will be sitting in one corner clapping at the celebrity. Instead, do something different. Plan it differently. Get involved with your publisher. Get involved with your store. Show your passion to the store owners so that on the day of the launch, they actually root for your book and ensure that maximum copies are sold. So when you're doing store visits, take a different concept around. Get involved with your publishers and ensure that you give them a different show. The launch is possibly the biggest event that's going to happen in your book. Do justice to it. Give an idea which is as big as a disruptive idea that was there in your marketing. If you're not planning to do anything great, then just avoid the book launch and do a digital launch instead. If you're going to do it really well. Welcome back. So your book is out there. It's already out in the stores. It's possibly started flying off the shelves. People are reading it. Some of them are posting reviews. Now is the time to actually amplify it. Now that people are writing reviews, you have to ensure that those reviews get amplified and they start getting their own viral impact. Couple of things to do. If you're getting any press reviews, don't let just stand in the press. Take all the press reviews, put them in a single video, and create a large, impactful compilation of all your reviews put together. Use a simple mobile camera. Talk to the people who've really been impacted by your book, who've really been touched by your book. Take these heartfelt, honest reviews in one single video and put it out there again. It's important to tell readers with passion that you've written a good book and people are really appreciating it for all that it's worth. Use booktubers to amplify your impact. In the following slide, you'll find a few names of some of the top booktubers in India. Get in touch with them after your book is released and ensure that they have a fair reading of your book, and let the verdict decide whether it's going to get amplified or not. Use contests on Instagram and Twitter to actually amplify the impact of all these reviews. Use Bookstagrammers and Instagrammers to pose with your book and actually tell the world proudly that you're reading a great book written by you. If all of these adds up well, you will soon see that all the good reviews are adding up and the word of mouth is spreading really far and wide. And trust me, After all of it is done, just switch off one particular weekend and on that Sunday, walk down to the bookstore and enter the store and take a look at the bestseller chart. And hey, I'll be indeed very happy if you see your book on that shelf in the bestseller stand, because that's the dream that we started with, the dream of possibly converting your book into a bestseller. This masterclass would be well worth it if any of you can reach this stage by using any of the inputs that I've covered in this masterclass. Thank you for being with me, and I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed being with me and have made use of all the inputs that we've been talking of for so long. Thank you once again.